Hi, this is Nolan Carpenter with Mockingbird Home Inspections in Belton, Texas. You know, over the years working with a lot of older homes, I've found some pretty scary stuff in attics. So let's take a look. So typically in most attics, you would have storage space or possibly even enough room to remodel for extra living space at some point. And you generally have a furnace, but you might also have some scary things that are a little worse than grandma's trunk or some cobwebs. So I definitely wanted to point out this electrical box because this should be a closed junction box for safety. But all of these electrical wires are exposed out in the elements where it's easy for them to arc and possibly cause a fire. So this is another exposed electrical connection that I wanted to point out. This is obviously handyman wiring that someone has done. Definitely not a licensed electrician. And basically, this is a serious safety hazard for fires. So we definitely want to point these out and get them corrected and get a professional that's licensed with electrical to look at these and get them corrected. So another type of wiring I wanted to point out is basically these are the remnants of what it was here. This house was built in 1890. And basically what was here with these knobs, these ceramic knobs that are posted throughout the area of the attic, is that was knob and tube wiring. So basically, sometimes it's called K&T wiring. And so that's the beginning of residential home wiring for electricity that started about in the 1880s and ran all the way up into the 1940s. And it's a solid copper conduit that's wrapped in a cloth sheath that is permeated with asphalt and a lot of times called a loom. So basically, the wiring would be run on these knobs, and if it ran inside the joist, it would have a ceramic tube that it would run through, and that's where they get the name knob and tube wiring. So basically, with these two strands, you would have a hot and a neutral, and they wouldn't be grounded, and you definitely never want this wiring to be covered up with insulation. Now, one thing that's important to point out is after 80 or 90 years, this wiring could become dangerous. It could be frayed, a rat could have chewed on it. Otherwise, it's pretty good wiring. It does hold up, but you definitely want to get it checked out. So if a home inspection was to come across some knob and tube wiring that's still in place, you would definitely want a licensed professional electrician to come in and evaluate what's here and what's being used and how good of a condition it really is. So next I wanted to talk about some exhaust vents. This is a bathroom fan exhaust that is has a loose connection, but the main problem is it's terminating in the attic. This should terminate to the outside, and it is operable for the bathroom downstairs, but again, this should be terminating to the outside, not in the attic, because this is adding moisture. So another exhaust termination is this dryer exhaust. So basically, this up to 25 feet can exhaust to the outside, but what they've done is terminated here in the attic. So not only is it adding a lot of moisture, but this is eventually going to get clogged, and that's why we don't want to ever have a dryer termination in an attic. So I wanted to point out we have an electric furnace side by side. So this is a split system with an evaporator coil in each one. So basically, one thing that is important that I wanted to point out with this unit is we have wiring here. This is a drip pan under here for catching any condensing water. And each of them have drip pans. This one has a primary drain, but it doesn't have an auxiliary drain. The one over here has no primary drain or auxiliary drain. The drain that's there is plugged. They both have safety switches on them, which is this yellow wire here, but it's not wired correctly up here. And so those wires are exposed and can arc and cause a fire. And should this switch for any reason fail, there's no auxiliary drain to the outside to keep this pan from filling up with water and dripping into the downstairs room. So we definitely want to point out that these things are some serious issues that need to be addressed. These two units, however, was made in the 80s, and so they're at the end of their lifespan. So they're not going to be, if for any reason they'll be using them in one more year or this season, we definitely want to get them checked out by a professional and make sure that they're working as good as they can do for their age. So an important factor in any attic is venting, and it's usually 1 square foot of venting for every 300 square feet of floor space. So in this particular attic, this house was built in 1890, so it has a lot of hip roof to it. It does have some gable, and we have 2 fans up in the top that are letting out some hot air that are auxiliary fans. And then we also have some soffit vents, and in a lot of homes they'll have what they have is a ridge vent, and then sometimes you'll have gable vents. The best scenario for most homes is going to be ridge vents and soffit vents. Now, a lot of homes are usually undervented. If you're in a colder climate, the better ventilation, the better. So it's important to remember that if you don't understand how your attic is vented, or you're not sure, the best thing is to find a licensed professional roofer in your area that works in your region that's going to know the best way to vent your attic. So one important thing that we look at in attics is any type of where there's been water penetration. So anytime you have ridges, valleys, you have any type of penetration where there's a vent or anything in a roof, there's a chance for leaking and there's a chance for moisture. And so when you do a home inspection, you can always do a moisture test to see what the level would be if it is damp. And of course, 19% or higher is where mold and mildew is going to start to grow. So you can see where there has been some water damage here. Now this has got a newer roof that's been put on it, but we definitely want to get some structure checked out here to see if any of this wood is rotten, because at some point in time it was wet. And so that's one of the things that we look at anywhere in the roof is all of the areas where there could have been any water damage or water penetration. So we haven't showed you everything in an attic, but we did show you a lot of the major things that you'll run into with doing a home inspection that you might be concerned about. So we can't include everything in one video, but we do have one coming up in the near future for fireplace safety for the winter. And we want you to follow us on Facebook. So this is Nolan Carpenter with Mockingbird Home Inspections, Belton, Texas. Thanks.